Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning, this is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. This program is broadcast every single week at AccessTV.org studios in downtown Hartford. And this show is designed to give the guests a chance to give their life story. This morning, I have an extremely high-profile guest who has an extensive background in the legal field. He's also been involved in professional league sports. And my guest this morning is he was the former president, CEO of the New Britain Rockets, and he's now currently the chairman of United Way of Berlin and New Britain area throughout Connecticut. My guest this morning is Bill Dowling. Good morning, Bill. How you doing?
Good morning, John. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. And you?
That's good. Very, very good. Thank you.
Okay. Bill, I know you was born and raised in Holyoke, Massachusetts. What was life like that growing up in Holyoke?
Life was just wonderful, John. This was back. I was born in 1941, and I sort of came of age in the 50s and 60s and early 70s in Holyoke, and it was just fantastic. It was at that point, it was probably the most Irish city in the country. It was maybe 6% of an Irish population, and made great friends. The schools were terrific, and I'm always say I'm from Holyoke.
Right.
You never take Holyoke out of the boys. So it was a great experience for me.
Now, you grew up in Holyoke during the time when the Boston Red Sox, I believe, had Ted Williams. Was you a big Boston Red Sox fan?
I was a huge Red Sox fan, John. As a matter of fact, I saw Ted Williams' last at bat against Fat Jack Fisher of the Orioles at Fenway Park when he hit the home run, rounded third base, touched home plate, and was gone. Never came to bat again. And even though 100,000 people claimed they were there were only 18,000 of us, believe it or not, on that day in September.
Okay.
And so, I was a huge Red Sox fan growing up. I worked in the legislature in Boston for a number of years after I graduated from college, and I used to, go to all the Red Sox games. Got fairly friendly with one of the Red Sox owners, someone who actually ran the team, and so I was a huge Red Sox fan. I mean, I courted my wife at Fenway Park when I was in law school at Boston College, and remained a Red Sox fan until I ended up eventually working for the Yankees in 1986.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what other sports? Was you a Boston Celtics fan also?
I was a big Celtics fan. I was a Boston Bruins fan because hockey in those days was really the biggest sport in Boston, Jonathan, back in the 60s and 70s. And those are the days of Bobby Orr and Phil Esposito and so on. Huge Celtic fan, Bill Russell and Sam Jones, and was a Patriots fan, the old Boston Patriots.
Oh, okay.
With Gino Capoletti and Babe Parilli and the others, back in the day. So they were great sports days in Boston, and they are now. I mean, it's continued to be a fabulous place for a sports fan.
Do you get a chance to go back up in that area, Boston or Holyoke, every now and then?
I do. As a matter of fact, my brother lives in Holyoke, and so I go up and visit him every month or so. We have lunch together. He's up there with his family. And I actually attended the opening day at Fenway Park this year with another brother of mine who's a big Red Sox fan who lives in New Jersey, and we got tickets and went to the opening day because he wanted to see the ring ceremony from the previous World Series victory. So yeah, I do spend a lot of time in Holyoke, and every now and then do go to Boston.
Well, I will let you know, we did talk about this off camera. We have one thing in common. I am a Boston Red Sox fan, so like you. We lost John Lester, so we're not going to get him back.
Exactly.
But I think we'll find some good prospects.
Yeah, no, I think the Red Sox will be great. And I was a Red Sox fan. You got to keep that in mind.
You're a Yankees
when you
fan.
go to work for the Yankees and you work for George and you make friends at the Yankees and you live in New York, I don't live in New York. We have a house in New York. Then I think I'll always be a Yankee fan.
Yeah, I could never. Well, I would say never, because maybe if I met the Yankees and they talked me into a deal like you had, I might change my mind too.
Right.
So I won't say never.
You know, it's kind of interesting, Jonathan, because, you know, I was such a big Red Sox fan. I went to that game in 1978 when Bucky Dent hit the home run.
Mm-hmm.
I was there at Fenway,
You
and I described it as like a death in the family. It was awful.
Right.
And so I go to work for the Yankees, and I walk into this big office at Yankee Stadium. I look up on the wall, and there's a Leroy Neiman print of the Dent home run.
Oh boy.
And I thought to myself, Bill, you must be in the wrong place. You can't. This is you can't be doing this.
Yeah.
And even now, I have some friends of mine who say, "How could you ever go to work for the Yankees? You know, you're a big Red Sox fan." But you know, after a while, obviously, it's professionally, it was a great move for me, and obviously delighted that I did it.
Well, I wonder how you felt in 2004 when the Red Sox finally beat the Yankees.
You know, I didn't feel that bad about it, because I think underlying all of it, I still had this great feeling toward the Red Sox, and I was so happy that they, you know, particularly the way they did it to come back and win 4 in a row, to me was incredible. So I wasn't that upset. The Yankees had won so many division titles and so many World Series that at that point, another one, while it's important, it was much more important that the Red Sox won one. So I was happy for them.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. You know.
Now, I know you have an extensive background in sports, but before we get to sports, what kind of led you into the legal field when you graduated from Boston College?
Well, what happened was I was working for a politician in Massachusetts who ran for governor in 1970. He was a very liberal Democrat, great person, Morris Donahue from Holyoke, and he was the president of the state Senate. We won a convention, but we lost the primary to Kevin White, who was then mayor of Boston. And my boss had decided that if he lost the election, he wasn't going to run for re-election. So here I was out of nowhere. What was I going to do with my life? It turned out that the dean of the Boston College Law School, Frank Larkin, was a friend of mine, and he helped me get into the law school. And, you know, I ended up graduating in 1973. But it was really just kind of a fortuitous situation where Frank and I were, the dean, we were good friends. And, you know, he suggested I go to law school. There are lawyers in my family. So it all just made great sense. Plus, I had a wife, who I wasn't quite married yet, but I should say I had somebody who I was going to marry that was kind of pushing me to get a little serious about, you know, my future. Right. So that ended me, you know, that's how I ended up at law school.
Now, after law school, what kind of led you into Manhattan in New York?
Well, I went to New York. I was an assistant district attorney in Manhattan, which is New York County. And the main reason I went there, Jonathan, was because when I graduated from law school, I was 32 years old, so a little bit older than most law students when they graduate. And I wanted to get some quick litigation experience. And I thought the best way to do that would go to a DA's office, particularly in a place like New York, where I knew there was always, you know, all kinds of crime and litigation, other sorts of things going on. And so I applied, and Frank Hogan was then the district attorney in Manhattan, and he hired me. And so I started in 1973, and it was like 3 of the best years of my life being a prosecutor. It was just wonderful. Those 3 years prosecuting street crime and white collar crime in Manhattan was just fantastic.
Did you get a chance to meet the former mayor, Ed Koch, during that
time? I did meet Mayor Koch. In fact, I used to meet him quite a bit at Yankee Stadium when he would come for opening day. Okay. He was always a guest of Mr. Steinbrenner's in the Yankee suite, and he would always come by and say hello, and he was just a wonderful guy. Yeah. Now,
before you get to the Yankees, you was also the chief, was it the chief?
Well, what happened was, yes, I left the attorney general. I left the DA's office after 3 years. I became, for a brief period of time, the head of a state agency, the Bureau of Prosecution and Defense Services, which is an organization that provides legal services to prosecutors and defense attorneys in the state of New York. And then Robert Abrams got elected attorney general, and he hired me to be chief of the criminal division in the New York State Attorney General's office. So we had statewide jurisdiction over a vast array of white-collar crimes. I started there in 1979, the year that Bob got elected, and I was there until 1985. But in early 1985, I was appointed special prosecutor to investigate corruption in the New York City criminal justice system. And this was an outgrowth of what they call the Knapp Commission in New York, which investigated corruption in the system. And in the past, that was always a joint appointment of the governor and the attorney general. And Mario Cuomo was the governor. but under the statute, strictly speaking, the Attorney General made the appointment. So, make a long story short, Bob appointed me, and I lasted about maybe 6 months on the job before Governor Cuomo got all upset over the way the process, not over me, but the process. And so ultimately I said, Bob, listen, why don't I resign and let's you two guys get together, appoint somebody else. And that's actually what happened. So, but that was a very stressful time for me because I was in the papers all the time, the New York Times doing editorials about how could the Attorney General do this and what's going on. And none of it was about me. It was more about the process. So that's why when I eventually ended up working for the Yankees, the timing was great because after I left the special prosecutor job, I went back to the Attorney General's office, and I was sort of searching for something to do because my old job had been filled. So I was kind of sort of in a state of limbo. And then of course along came George, and the rest is history. Well,
did George Steinbrenner come to you, or did you go to apply for the job?
No, actually it's a very interesting story. I didn't apply for anything. We were back in 1985 investigating some of the big box stores in New York, the Tiffany's, the Bulgaris, and so on. And what some of them were doing is if you went in and bought a big ticket item for, let's say, over $10,000, they would say to you, you know what, if you don't want to pay the tax on this, which was hefty, like 6%, 7%, just give us an out-of-state address and we'll ship an empty box. And that way you can avoid paying the tax. And so the state of New York was losing, millions of dollars in taxes every year. So the state tax department asked us to begin this investigation. We began a grand jury investigation. Steinbrenner, as well as Yoko Ono and others, came in as witnesses in the case. And so when Steinbrenner came in, I thought to myself, well, I'll talk to this guy. I'm from Western Mass. He went to school in Western Mass in the Berkshires at Williams. As much as I hate the Yankees, and I basically didn't like him at that time, I'll spend a few minutes with him, just, nice and light, and see what happens. And, just say hello to him. So we spent a very pleasant 10 or 15 minutes together, just talking about life in general. I wasn't presenting the case to the grand jury, so I didn't have to, brief him on what was going on there. And then a day or two after that, all of a sudden I get a phone call from somebody asking me if I wanted to be the Yankees general counsel. It was his lawyer from Tampa calling. And at first, when he called me, I slammed the phone down. I said, hey, you can't be serious about this. This is ridiculous. So, but after a while, they kept on calling. And I remember I flew down to Atlanta over Thanksgiving. And in 1985, met George and the lawyer. And January 1986, there I am at Yankee Stadium taking the D train and walking into my new office. So it was an incredible, change for me because, as you know, I mean, I was a criminal prosecutor. I did all criminal work. Now I'm going to work for the Yankees as a general counsel, and most of their work is civil work, and I hadn't done any of that before. So it was incredibly stressful a period of time, plus going to work for the Yankees, plus giving up a career path, which I was on my way to be hopefully a judge at some point. And, but I got a great wife, and she was, totally supportive, and there I was.
Well, I mean, it had to be a high honor at this particular point to be working for one of the highest or one of the most prestigious baseball franchises or baseball teams in America. And I mean, for you now to have this position, did you see yourself now as a true New Yorker?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. In those days, there's no question, Jonathan, I was a New Yorker at that point. I mean, I had been in New York we came in 73. We owned a house there. Our 2 kids were born there. So yeah, I was a true New Yorker for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, did people look up to you now at this point? Now that you're working for the Yankees, that you must be
in those days.
Was your popularity really growing?
Well, I mean, it's a kind of a thing where you go to a cocktail party, you go to somebody's house for dinner. That's all they want to talk about, and the last thing I want to do is talk about the Yankees, because you talk about it all the time. But no, it was. I was very popular amongst the legal. Practitioners in New York, because I gave out a lot of business because I had, not being a civil guy, I needed a lot of help to handle some of the Yankee lawsuits. And so there were 4 or 5 lawyers that I would always look to help me. And that, that worked out just fine. But, if you're working for the Yankees and if you're working for someone like George in such a high powered position where you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, A, you very quickly get burnt out. And B, the critical thing is the ability to leave.
Right.
So if you're a lawyer, you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, I can go out tomorrow and make X amount of money in the legal field. I don't have to have this job.
Mhm.
Other people at the Yankees, when I was there, it was a very, very, they were difficult straits because they were not only big Yankee fans and they loved being part of the Yankees and et cetera, but they couldn't get out. And so, they got beaten up a little bit and, they take it home with them and they had no alternative. So to me, but I had alternatives, and that's what made the job early on, at least, somewhat more, palatable to me.
One quick question before we take our break.
Yeah.
What was it like working for George Steinbrenner day to day?
It was fascinating. I mean, it was incredibly challenging. George would call, if he was in Florida, he'd probably call me 20 times a day. And when I was his lawyer, you were involved in everything.
Yes.
You got involved in all the baseball deals, all the non-baseball deals, all the things that George would have you do, which, I never, not that there's anything wrong with them, but things that I'll take to the grave with me. So it was fascinating, but it was very, very stressful.
Okay.
Because you work so hard, you work long hours. Just to give you an example, I had to be at all games. So I would get into the stadium at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I would be there till probably 11 o'clock at night if we played a night game. I would get home. I'd have a hot toddy to sort of relax, get up in the morning, coffee, and back to the ballpark, So, and I did this for three straight years. And even in the off season, I was busy. I think I told you off camera that if you look at front offices in baseball now, Jonathan, they've got 75, 100, 150 people. Back in my day at the Yankees, we probably had about, I would say, 10 to 20 really critical front office people. And now it's exponentially grown to maybe, as I say, 75, 100, 200 in some cases. So there's a lot more for me to do.
Yes.
And I ended up essentially running the place for a number of years, and that meant, administrative things and signing all the checks as well as doing the legal stuff. But, frankly, I loved it.
Bill, we're up on our first break. Let's come back, get into part two of your involvement, a little bit more probably with the Yankees, but definitely get into your involvement as the new owner of the New Britain Rockets.
Happy to do it, Jonathan.
Okay,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Okay.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I am hosting All About You this morning with my special guests, currently the chairman of the United Way for New Britain and Berlin area, and also the former New Britain Rockets owner. We'll be right back very shortly. Thank you.
Diamond Ruff is a brilliant 28-year-old con man with swag, whose childhood was robbed by violence and prejudice. With a passion for the arts, Diamond plans the crime of a lifetime. Diamond's well-crafted plan ends in tragedy and in his imprisonment. Is this the end for Diamond? Does a modern-day Martin Luther King Jr. hold the key to Diamond's overcoming life's challenges and his greatest enemy, himself?
These are the monsters of the road. Ever drive alongside a tractor trailer in the rain? Scary. You're hoping they don't change lanes. Now they see you, now they don't. This monster can crush you in an instant. They may be insured for millions, but you're not thinking of that in a dangerous situation. I'm attorney Jeffrey Dressler. Have an accident, you know what to do. Because this is what we do. 24/7, 11/22.
Soy licenciado Jeffrey Dressler. Se aprende cada día y por donde vaya. Así, Mega Educación celebra a los estudiantes del mes medallistas de oro con tabletas de computadora para las aplicaciones STEM o vacaciones a Coco Key Parque Acuático o boletos de eventos, cena y transportación por Beverly Hills Limousine. Porque somos Mega Educación. Celebramos la educación y lo hacemos divertido.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small. I'm hosting All About You this morning with my very special guest, the chairman of United Way of Berlin and New Britain, and the former New Britain Rockets owner, president, and CEO. Bill, we kind of left off talking about your position with the New York Yankees, and I guess we can go into depth about that for a very long time.
Right.
But obviously, at some point, you would eventually become the owner of the New Britain Rockets. What kind of led you up in that position to become the owner?
Well, let me tell you what happened, John. What happened was I left the Yankees at the end of the '88 season, and then I became their outside lawyer for 2 more years. I joined a law firm, Wachtell and Mazer in Manhattan. And so I was at the law firm. I was there for, 7 or 8 years. And then I met up with Coleman Levy, an attorney in town. And we made a sort of an abortive bid to buy the Hartford Whalers. It was kind of too late in the process. It wasn't going to work out. But Coleman and I both said simultaneously to each other, let's try to get a baseball team around here because we both have a love of baseball. And I was I think I was 56, 57, decided that, a little sick of practicing law. I want to do something else in my life. So make a long story short, we courted Joe Bouzas, who owned the New Britain Rockets, for a couple of years. And we bought the team in 2000. And it was one of the great experiences of my life.
Now, Bill, owning a minor league professional baseball team is a lot different than owning a professional major league baseball team. Is it a big difference?
There's a huge difference. I mean, first of all, if you own a minor league team, I mean, you've got players who aren't very well known to anybody else. Yes. You got to. In our case, we had the Minnesota Twins were our affiliate, and there weren't too many Twins fans in the area. Minor league baseball is strictly about family entertainment. That's what it's all about. When we bought the team, we had this beautiful stadium in New Britain, and we had made a serious decision that we were going to market the team mostly to the kids and the women in the family. So we spent a lot of marketing money on Nickelodeon, the Oprah show, the Jonathan Small show, the morning news shows, in the hopes that, because the theory was that any male I know or we knew would want to go to a minor league, would want to go to a baseball game. The trick was to get mama, the woman in the family who make the decision about discretionary dollars, to be the one to suggest that or to agree to it. And so that's why we spent all this marketing money to do that. The other thing we did is we cleaned up the stadium. We made, even though it was a minor league stadium, we made it look like a major league stadium. You could eat off the floor. We put all the bells and whistles up, because we wanted people to walk into the ballpark and say, oh, wow, I can't believe this place is in New Britain. This is great. And the first year we owned the team in 2000, we bought the team early in 2012, just before the season started. We had probably the worst team in the minor leagues, Jonathan. We lost, I think it was our last 19 games in a row. We were 40 games under 500. I mean, I was at every game, and I used to hide because we were so bad. The fans would come after me. But having said that, we increased the attendance by 50,000, even though the team wasn't very good. And so that made me realize that we were really onto something. So, and every year exponentially, the attendance grew since then. And, we've always done 350, 360,000 people. I think 2010 we lost like 10 games to rain, and we ended up with 24 sellouts and 2 crowds over 8,000. The place only holds 6,100. So the fans have just been fantastic. So the last 5 or 6 years were just, terrific there. Major leagues, the most important thing is the players. You want to be able to win. And that's how they can afford to get these high prices.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not going to work out. That's why you see what happened to the Cubs signing John Lester, as you talked about. It's why the Yankees will probably end up signing somebody like Scherzer for $160 million, whatever, a little more than what Lester got, because they need to create a buzz factor for their fans. And that buzz factor for us is the excitement of going to a minor league baseball game with the family, where you can't spend more than $50 if you had to,
right,
as opposed to going to a major league game where it's all about the players and being in this big, beautiful stadium, that sort of thing. So this is different. I mean, although the revenue streams are pretty much the same, we work off the same revenue streams, but theirs is much more significant financially, obviously, than ours.
Okay. So, I mean, is it a lot of money that you have to invest to buy a minor league baseball
team? I think so. I mean, when we bought the team back in 2000, we paid $6.5 million for it, which was the most that ever paid for a minor league team.
Okay.
Now, since then, the prices have totally gone out of whack. I mean, there was a team in single A. Single A, they only play 72 games, I guess it is 73 games. there was a team out in Dayton, Ohio that just sold for $39 million.
Mhm.
Of course, they've had sellouts every game for the last couple of years, so that contributes to it. But minor league baseball is red hot. I mean, we're an alternative to a movie, to going to Six Flags, to going to the restaurant, to going to the beach. And, everybody loves baseball. What we found was that people in this area, even though obviously there might be Red Sox, Yankees, and Mets fans, they can't afford to go more than once to any of those three stadiums.
Yes.
So they'll go once because it's a rite of passage. You've got to take your kids there or whatever. But if you want your fix of baseball, you end up at a place like New Britain Stadium. And that sustained us for 12 years.
Well, I just think, people might have a lot of misconceptions about minor league baseball because obviously you don't have the TV revenue shares like you do in major professional league sports. You don't have cable.
Right.
So basically, I guess the best way or the only way that you make your profit is on the gate receipts of the people purchasing the tickets.
Well, it's a gate. It's tickets. It's also selling of merchandise. And the biggest number probably, the two biggest numbers are concessions, which are very important, and sponsorships, selling of all the billboards and signs and so on. So that's, once you start attracting fans, as we did in 2000, then the sponsors and everybody else ends up following. And that's why, we did so well for the 12 years we were there.
So if you had invested $6 million to purchase the New Britain Rockets, at some point you're able to make back the $6 million and then make a profit over a period of time?
The answer is yes.
Okay. That's good. Well, that's a good way to do it.
I'm not going into more detail. The answer is clearly
yes.
yes. Let me just say this. When we bought the team, I told my investors in New York, listen, if you need this for rent money, don't invest it in the team.
Okay.
But I can't guarantee you we're going to give you money back every year, but I can guarantee you that when we eventually sell the team, that you're gonna be happy. And it turns out that every year we own the team, we gave our investors a check, and when we sold the team, most of them were pretty happy.
Well, Bill, why did you actually sell the team for the Rockets?
I think there comes a point in your life that it's time to do something else, Jonathan. In my case, I was like 71 years old, I guess it was. And I had some investors who'd been in the deal for 12 years and they felt that, now might be the time to sell it. And we ended up selling it. We got a good price. And one reason I wanted to sell was because the only way I know how to do it is the way it was done with the Yankees, where I was there almost 24 hours a day. I was at every single game. When you run a minor league franchise, it's like running for the Congress. You got to know everybody. You got to talk to everybody. You got to find out what everybody's problems are. You got to listen to them. And so I used to do all of that. And, for every game. And after a while, you get a little tired and you get home, 5 nights in a row at 11 o'clock. And, it can be a little bit difficult.
Now, I believe you was a co-owner.
I was a co-owner. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we had Coleman and I put together an investor group, and I think we maybe had 15 or 16 different owners, but he and I were the co-managed the team, and I was the actual on-site day-to-day guy.
Now, after you sold the team, you still remained as the president and CEO?
Well, no. When we sold the team, part of the deal was they asked me, would you stay on as a consultant for a couple of years?
Okay.
And I said yes. But 6 months into that, they called me and said, listen, will you come back as president? We need you. We've got an all-star game coming up. We've got a lot of events planned. We got to make sure these are successful. So I agreed, and so I returned as president and remained president until March of last year, 2013, I guess it was.
Bill, did working for the New York Yankees kind of gave you some experience and expertise on how to run a baseball team?
I think so, Jonathan. I mean, you learn a lot from being on somebody like Steinbrenner and being at the major league level in the Yankees. So that when you do transfer that sort of experience to the minor leagues, you have a certain amount of confidence because you've done a lot of those other things at the major league level, and now at the minor league level, it's the same thing, but it's a lot easier if having done it before. So I think it was great, but it's still a people game. Yeah, that's all it is. Minor league baseball is all about people. If you get good people, which we had great people, you're going to be successful. If you don't, then it's not going to work out. I mean, the most important people on our staff were the ushers and the people that had and ticket takers and ticket people, because they're the ones that had the first point of business, point of contact with a lot of our fans. It's like you go to a law firm. Who's the most important person in a law firm? It's the receptionist sitting at the desk. That's when you form your first impression of what kind of law firm this is all about.
Yes, I agree with that.
You can understand that.
I understand that part. Right. Do you still have any more interest in getting back involved in professional sports?
Well, I do. I mean, I think you never lose it. You get the bug after a while, Jonathan. Where you say to yourself, you want to do something else in sports, but it's somewhat limited around here, so I'm not really sure whether or not it would work around here. But I'm always keeping my eyes and ears open. I'm sort of plotting my next move. I'm, as you know, I'm chairman of the board of the United Way, as you mentioned before, New Britain and Berlin, and Susan Dunn does such a fabulous job as president, and so I hope that they keep me in that position for a while, because that group does God's work, and particularly in a place like New Britain, that kind of an effort is really needed in the educational area. So I'm sort of looking to maybe branch out, maybe do some more not-for-profit work. We'll see.
Well, you want to continue being the chairman of the United Way for New Britain and Berlin? As long
as the local people want me, and Susan Dunn, gives me your blessing. Absolutely, yes. I mean, I just think it's a great organization, and the things that we do for the community in New Britain is really very, very important. I mean, particularly in the educational area, we fund all these after-school programs, these summer programs that are just so critical to kids, success down the road. That I would want to continue doing it.
And you just recently received an award for some type of club, the Alliance Club, I believe it was, that you received an award.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I received a year ago. I received probably the highest award you can get for sports people in Connecticut, a Gold Key Award. Okay. Which is awarded by the sports writers in Connecticut, which I was, incredibly, happy to receive. The Lions Club, I always get, the obligatory pen for speaking, the honorarium, or maybe I get a little paperweight or something like that. But I love speaking to them. I mean, that's the grassroots. I mean, you got to talk to people like that, because they're the ones that are we're our fan base.
Yes. And you still have some type of office or consultant work that you do in New York?
I do. I still have counsel in my law firm, Wachtel and Mazer. I haven't done a lot of legal work in the last few years because I was more, obviously did the baseball. But that's obviously an option if I want to, get back into practicing law again. I'm not so sure I want to, but we'll see.
And you are currently a resident of Connecticut?
I am. I'm a resident of Connecticut. Have been for a couple of years. I live in East Haddam, which is down right off of Route 9, near where, we live right near the Goodspeed Opera House. So, I love living here, and it's a great state.
Yes, well, that's good to know. Yeah. Any people that you network with that people out there would probably find interesting? I know George Steinbrenner. We talk about him. He's passed away.
Yeah, George has passed away. Brian Cashman worked with me at the Yankees back in our salad days, and I keep in touch with him. There's a couple of other people at the Yankees that I'm very friendly with. I've got friends in the Red Sox system. I made a lot of friends when I was in Major League Baseball. One of the reasons why was because I was somebody that they could talk to. George was very, very sort of, had a lot of issues with the other owners and with the presidents of leagues and the commissioner and so on. So they'd sort of go around the horn to me on some issues. And I'll tell you one quick great story. Bart Giamatti, who was president of the National League when I was at the Yankees, he and I became fairly good friends. I would go visit him at Park Avenue at his office, et cetera. And when I'm leaving the Yankees, he called me and said, "Bill, come on down. I want to see you." So I went down to his office, and he said to me, "Listen, I know you're leaving the Yankees and you're going to join a law firm. Go ahead and do that. But I'm going to put you out in Cincinnati. I'm going to make you president of the Cincinnati Reds." The Marge shots out there, but he explained it to me. Great, great city. They closed the schools on opening day, the whole thing. And I said, "Well, that sounds great, Yeah. And 6 months later, I'm driving to Cape Cod, my wife and daughters, and like the bulletin that he died of a heart attack. So, Jonathan, I could have been somebody.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think you did pretty
look
good
what happened.
already.
Well,
I think you did a pretty
yeah,
good job.
whatever,
But
yeah.
you had a great opportunity at that time. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. Well, I've been very lucky. I've been very fortunate in my life, and God's been good to me, and I had some great friends and great people. So I get up every morning and say a little prayer.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
What's your plans for the year 2015? Any business plans? Any new?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of things. I mean, I've got some options open that I'm sort of considering. Probably the biggest one is my wife and I are going to become grandparents in April for the first time. So we're excited about that. Our daughter in California is going to have a child. So, we'll see what happens. But that really sort of excites both of us.
Well, that's very good to know.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you would like to let people know about yourself, or
No, just what you see is what you get, and I don't do very many of these appearances for a lot of different reasons. But when Susan Dunn suggested I do it, then I immediately leaped to give you a buzz because she's one of the great people, and I really have a lot of respect for her.
Well, again, Bill, I know you're the chairman of the United Way of New Britain and Berlin, and I did have Susan on my program a couple of weeks ago, and it has to be a tremendous honor to be part of the United Way because they provide a lot of good services for people throughout the country.
Jonathan, they really do, and we have these board meetings maybe once a month or so with all the other board chairmen from the Connecticut area, and the staff of the United Way here in Hartford are always there and making and discussing policy and strategy, and you just come away so impressed with these people. I mean, they really have a great heart and a soul and a sense of what needs to be done to cure some of these problems of the educational issues and homelessness and poverty and so on. So just to be a part of that and be able to help out, particularly in a place like New Britain, which is really kind of hard scrabble, it needs all the help it can get. That makes me feel good. And
one last thing, I guess we didn't really mention this, but professional baseball players and professional players in general get a lot of scrutiny that they make so much money, but they do give back in a lot of ways that many people just don't realize. And obviously, by you working for the New York Yankees, you must have seen that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most, first of all, they didn't in those days. I mean, I think the highest paid salary in the highest salary in the major leagues was Dave Winfield, and that was $1 million.
Right.
$1 million and change. But, most of them had foundations, and they have foundations now. And they do give back in an incredible kind of way. So most of them are really, really good citizens. Now, a little different. When I was there, most of them were terrific, but you'd get occasionally get a ball player that when a kid would ask for an autograph, he'd give him a card, and for $5 I'll give you an autograph. You just send into this, that kind of thing. But general proposition, they're very very charitable and very supportive of things in the community.
Okay, that's gonna have to be your last words, Bill. I had enjoyed having you down here as my special guest, and I wish you the very best of luck in the year 2015.
My pleasure, Jonathan. Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
No problem.
Okay, great.
This is Jonathan Small. I had enjoyed hosting All About You this morning with my special guest, the former owner, president, and CEO of the New Britain Rockets, and currently the chairman of the United Way here in the Berlin, New Britain area. And as I always say, there's a lot of interesting programs you could always look at on accesstv.org network throughout the week. Next month will be the Producers Awards. That's coming up in January, and that's also something to look forward to. And my last sayings every single week for people out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.